It was a Tuesday morning, early spring, air crisp, sunlight slow to burn off the dew clinging to the pasture. I remember the way my boots squelched in the dirt just beyond the barn, and how the scent hit me first. Thick, chemical, and completely out of place. Not manure, not rotting hay, not even spilled diesel from the old tractor. This was different, sharper, industrial. I stopped mid-step, the rake I'd been carrying slipping slightly in my grip. My barn sat about 100 feet back from the house, flanked by a shallow grove of pine and oak. Beyond that was what I called the rear acre, a scrubby, undeveloped patch of my property that backed up to the HOA's chain-link fence, and a so-called common area they claimed as green space but barely maintained. The smell was coming from back there. I wasn't one to overreact. I'd served 2 years in the Army Corps of Engineers and learned the difference between a nuisance and a threat. But that smell sent something primal down my spine, a warning. I walked the perimeter of the barn, slowly scanning. That's when I saw disturbed earth, a line of it about 8 feet long, fresh as if someone had taken a backhoe to the edge of my land and just barely covered their tracks. My boots crunched as I stepped closer. The soil was too loose, unnatural. I bent down and touched it. Damp but not rain-soaked. This hadn't come from above. Something had been buried. I recognized the signs. I had seen this before in Iraq and Afghanistan. Illegal dumping sites. I looked around. No tire tracks. No footprints. Just careful work and bad intentions, and this was my land. I had the deed and the county inspector's signature to prove it. Someone had trespassed, and that someone wasn't a stranger. I already had a good idea. The HOA and I had a history of disagreements. They tried to tell me what kind of fencing I could put up even though my property predated their subdivision. They fined me once for keeping a tarp-covered trailer shielded from street view. And Karen, the HOA president, was always hovering with her oversized sunglasses and clipboard. But this was different. This was criminal. I needed evidence. I went back to the house, checked the barn camera, and prepared to take soil samples. I sat with my coffee, bitter and black, watching my laptop load. That's when I heard the sound of a truck. Karen's silver Dodge Ram rolled just far enough into view behind the HOA path. The same vanity plates. The same smug presence. She didn't get out. After 3 minutes, she backed up and disappeared down the path. She was checking if her mess was still hidden. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Boots laced. Thermos filled. I walked into the dew-soaked grass to the grove. The smell was still there. So was something else, the same truck. This time parked practically on my property. Karen stepped out, clipboard as always. But she didn't come alone. 2 men followed. Contractor types, no badges, no HOA uniforms, just gloves and hard eyes. She pointed to my land. They complied, and that was my breaking point. I raised my phone. Filmed everything. Not confrontation evidence. When Karen saw me, our eyes locked. She froze. Then she panicked. The men rushed the tailgate. Tires spun. The truck vanished. They were burying sealed barrels. I backed the footage up immediately, cloud and email. Then I called Karen. Her voice was fake sweet. "Good morning, this is Karen from Maple Hollow HOA. I cut her off. Told her what I saw. Told her I had video. She tried to lie. Called it landscaping debris. I told her I had the deed. The plat map. The law. Her tone shifted to threat. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate your standing with the HOA, and she hung up. I contacted someone who didn't answer to HOAs. Someone federal. 2 days later, an HOA letter arrived claiming the activity was common maintenance and debris relocation. They denied everything, but my drone footage said otherwise. 4 buried dump sites. Not one, not accidental. Not new neighbors started avoiding me. Karen was already poisoning the well, so I escalated. That night I dug. 2 feet down, my shovel hit hollow plastic. A black medical waste barrel. Cracked seal. Yellow biohazard emblem. The smell burned my nose. I took samples. Sealed them. Photographed everything. This wasn't just HOA corruption, this was an environmental crime. I pulled records. Found the vendor name, Industrial Solutions. No licensing. No registration. A shell. I emailed an old contact, Jackson Lee, Environmental Crimes Task Force. Subject line, urgent. Illegal hazardous dumping. Evidence enclosed, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. Karen wouldn't wait, so I set up trail cameras. 4 of them. Military grade, silent, invisible. At 2:16 a.m., motion sensor triggered. 2 men returned. Gloves, hoods, a metal canister. They retrieved something from the hole I dug. They were trying to remove evidence. The taller one looked up, paused, scanning the dark. He didn't see me, but I saw everything. And now? Now I wasn't just watching, I was preparing, trying to recover evidence or worse, to tamper with it. I backed up the video twice. Once to my local hard drive and once to the cloud folder Jackson had access to. I even uploaded a compressed version to an anonymous Dropbox I kept for insurance. Old habits die hard. The next morning I woke to another email from the HOA. This one was colder, shorter. Dear Mr. Langley, we have received reports of unauthorized surveillance equipment installed near the HOA fence line. Please be advised this may constitute a violation of Maple Hollow's privacy ordinance and may be subject to legal review. Sincerely, Karen DeWitt, Maple Hollow HOA President. I laughed out loud. They were trying to flip the script. I wrote back one line. The only violation here is yours and it's federal. Try me. Then I called Jackson. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was as calm and gravel-thick as I remembered. Langley, he said, you just made my week. I briefed him quickly. The drone footage, the barrels, the video from 2:16 a.m., the chemical markings. He asked for everything. I sent it all. Then he said something that made the hair on my neck rise. This isn't the first time we've seen that barrel code. CLX 34 Mead. It's been flagged in 2 other dumping sites, both under investigation. If they're using your property to triangulate disposal, this might be bigger than you think. I already thought it was big. Now it felt enormous. He ended the call by saying, sit tight but be ready. If this gets green lit, we're coming in heavy. I stood by the window after that, watching the grove sway in the wind shadow, stretching like fingers across my barn. My land had become a battlefield, a crime scene, and I was the only witness willing to tell the truth. I didn't know when the marshals would come, but I knew one thing. I wasn't burying this. They were. And I was going to make them dig it all back up, barrel by barrel. The sun rose sluggishly the next morning, casting a pale orange haze over the treetops. I didn't sleep more than a few hours. My thoughts kept circling back to that moment on the trail cam, how the man had pulled something out of the earth, paused and looked upward. He didn't know he was being watched, but instinct had told him something was off. That kind of instinct doesn't come from mowing lawns or handing out HOA citations. That comes from working in shadows. I didn't wait. I slipped on gloves, pulled on my old tan field jacket, and packed a fresh Ziploc, a notepad, a mask, and a small toolkit. I didn't want to contaminate anything, but I wasn't about to sit on my hands while the feds went through the process of getting warrants. I knew how slow bureaucracy moved, and I also knew how fast evidence could disappear. The wind had picked up by the time I reached the back acre. Birds scattered as I stepped through the tree line, boots crunching over frost-bitten leaves and brittle pine needles. I headed to the exact site the 2 men had visited at 2:16 a.m. Only now the soil looked disturbed again, not like before. Not careful and sloppy, like they had panicked. I knelt beside the loose mound and unzipped my bag. Digging through cold earth is a particular kind of quiet. All you hear is the sound of your own breath, your thoughts echoing off every strike of the spade. About 2 feet down, I hit resistance, not a barrel this time, a box in white steel scratched and dented, with rubber seals on all sides and a faded black stamp across the top. Firearm evidence, do not open without clearance. My pulse jumped. I pulled the box free and set it gently on the tarp I'd laid beside me. It was locked, but the latch had rusted. I used a flathead to pry it open with as little force as possible. Inside were 3 things. 1. A sealed biohazard sample bag containing a plastic vial filled with dark amber liquid, labeled with a hospital serial number and the words toxin batch sample. Experimental, no disposal. 2. A crumpled manila folder, water-damaged but still legible. Printed facility logs from a medical lab, patient names. Some redacted, others not. 3. A burner phone, cheap, prepaid, dead, battery swollen. Case cracked, but a micro SD card still inside. This wasn't just illegal dumping. This was deliberate concealment. There were names attached to the waste test subjects, patients, victims. I took photos of everything. careful with gloves. The sample bag went into my cooler wrapped in triple insulation. The documents I scanned to 2 encrypted drives. The phone would wait. I wasn't about to trigger a location ping. I stepped back and looked around. The trees swayed. Everything looked normal, quiet, peaceful, but it was a lie. My phone buzzed. "Jackson, we've got movement," he said. "EPA's on board. This connects to an illegal disposal network we've been chasing. Private medical firms dumping toxic waste off-grid. Ghost haulers. You're saying Karen's HOA is a front for that?" "Not the A." A cluster of agents moved toward the maintenance shed, pried open the door and froze. One of them lifted something long and cylindrical, a corroded barrel still wet at the bottom. Another held up a handheld detector. The screen flashed red. Jackson swore under his breath. "Positive for methyl isocyanate. Same compound used in that plant disaster in India. Lethal in small doses." I swallowed hard. That was 200 feet from my well. "Exactly," he said. "You stopped a catastrophe." At 8:03 a.m., Karen was driven off the property in the lead Suburban. She didn't look out the window. The neighbors watched her go in silence, unsure whether to cheer, cry, or pretend they'd never spoken to her. A few looked ashamed. Most just stared, clutching their phones like shields. Then the HOA board office door opened again. 2 more board members were let out in cuffs. Greg Hartley, the treasurer who once fined me $70 for not mowing my easement on time, and Tricia Clean, the vice president who tried to ban red holiday lights for visual uniformity. They weren't smug now. No clipboards. No authority. Just people in freefall. Jackson leaned in. "You want to say something to them?" I shook my head. "Let the silence do it." The marshal sealed the front door with a bright orange federal seizure notice. The sign wasn't just ink. It was judgment nailed in place. 1 by 1 barrels were hauled out. 9 total, all packed with compounds requiring hazmat containment, buried in the HOA's wild buffer zone. The same trees where my daughter used to read under the leaves. What if she had dug too deep? What if any kid had? I clenched my fist, not from anger, from resolve. This would never happen again. The EPA's containment unit arrived. Jackson turned to me. "They'll handle cleanup. But the legal side? Just starting. Karen's been offered a deal. Full cooperation. If she talks, we go after the companies who paid her. You uncovered a bigger operation than we expected." I watched crews cordon off a new site near the retention pond. "How long will inspections last?" "Months, but your name is clean. You're not just a whistleblower. You're the reason this neighborhood isn't sitting on a toxic death trap." I didn't reply because I already knew this wasn't about HOA rules. It was about power corruption and the quiet war between silence and truth. And today, truth kicked the door in. The story went national. Reporters swarmed. Headlines flashed. Everyone wanted interviews. I gave one. Just one. I told them I smelled something that didn't belong. I knew my land better than they did. If you see something wrong and stay quiet, you're part of the rot. The HOA board collapsed. Neighbors apologized, but apologies don't unbury. 3 younger residents, Carlos, Mia, and Raj, began organizing to dissolve the HOA entirely. They didn't want control. They wanted accountability. Meanwhile, Jackson stayed a few days longer. One night by the fire pit, he said, "Most people would have moved away." "I've seen what happens when good men do nothing," I said. "I won't be that man again." Before he left, he shook my hand and pressed an old Marshals insignia patch into my palm. "You earned this." I framed it in my barn beside a photo of my daughter from before all this. Before I knew what rotted under the surface, the land is healing. Now the soil restored, new trees, planted, life returning, and me, I began building again, because now the whole country knows, and no one is burying anything else here. Not on my land, not ever again. Fall came, early gold, crimson, amber. Healing didn't look like revenge. It looked like clarity. My neighbors dissolved the HOA. The county approved it. Freedom, finally. And the biggest change wasn't in the soil, it was in me. Peace isn't inherited. You defend it, you protect it over and over, because the ground you stand on is only free if you protect it. And I did, for myself, for my neighbors, for the kids who will never know what once lay buried Here, and for my grandson who asked if I would do it all again. Yes, 1,000 times yes.